Hello, Pak Miko, Mbak Alpa, and class. We are from Group 6. We would like to present about the depiction of disability in children's literature. So our group consists of the first one, Adita Rahmadina, Annisa Rizqiatqiya, Fatah Saiful Haq, Indy Rahmadani, and I, Rizna Himmatu, and the last is Yessika Azzaria Limbong. Next slide, please. So this is the reason why we chose disability as the topic for our presentation. The portrayal of disability in children's literature plays a major role in molding children's perception on disability. Unfortunately, children with disabled characters have been depicted mostly to evoke the reader's feelings of sadness, fear, or even hatred with the disability instead of teaching them to accept that people with disabilities have different preferences. Therefore, our group would like to provide a critical response and analysis of disability in children's literature by using this psychological approach, as we believe that the representation of disability should not only provide with accurate and realistic information regarding a disability, but it should also promote empathy and acceptance. The first one is Moses Goes to a Concert. For the synopsis, this picture book is written and illustrated by Isaac Milman in 1998. Revolves around Moses, who are deaf, going to a concert with his teacher and another deaf schoolmates. There, he learns how to perceive music differently, which is using balloon to feel the music vibration. While enjoying the concert, he is inspired by the deaf percussionist to dare to dream big and to not limit himself in spite of the physical challenge he suffered from. So why did we choose this book? There are two reasons why did we choose this book. The first one is breaking the stereotypes normally inflicted upon hearing impaired people. In general, people with disability are likely to receive misconceptions such as that they cannot assimilate and communicate with normal people. However, it will be incorrectly understood that people who have hearing impairment cannot hear the voices and noises at all. In fact, they just perceive those through a different method. This is what exactly depicted in this picture book. And also, Moses Goes to a Concert contains many positive messages about living well with a disability, especially with hearing impaired people. Regardless of the common stereotype that disabled people cannot achieve the same thing as non-disabled people because of their physical limitation, the author has succeeded in proving that not limiting oneself is beautiful. Next slide, please. The next one is introducing inclusivity and impartiality to children. This book introduces the children about sign language. This hence shares a message to inclusivity and impartiality that between people with and without hearing disability can still perform meaningful social interaction. Next slide.
Okay. So this is Indy speaking, and I would like to explain about psychological analysis of Moses Goes to Concert. The first one, we analyze disability through reciprocal relationship between the characters. That is, we specified the relationship to adult and child relationship. Children's literature, which include an authentic relationship between the main characters within the book, should allow the disabled characters to have an active or leadership role in resolving the conflict. At the resolution, their teacher gives them balloons to hold on their laps to listen the music with their buddies. They also actively engage in learning to pick up the vibration from Marjorie Alwyn through the floorboards. This relationship is built on the basis of mutual interest. Alwyn teaches and encourages them to keep pursuing their dreams despite all the challenges, while Moses and his friends are responsible for learning the vibrations of the instruments with her. With encouragement from her, they gain the necessary confidence to advocate themselves. Next, please. Okay, so the second one, we analyzed disability through social psychoanalytic disability studies. So according to an article written by Dan Goodley in 2011, focusing on the connections and tensions between psychoanalysis and disability studies, disability has been politicized as a form of pathology by some scholars. For instance, a study conducted by Sigmund Freud who we know as the father of psychology and psychoanalysis, associating disability and disabled people to abusive personal experience, neglected childhood fantasies, and narcissism. This idea was later dismissed because it emphasized individuality over collectivity and personal choice over structural constraints, according to Mason, and it has contributed to the pathologizations of disabled people. Social psychoanalytic disability studies work to understand while also challenge disability, which according to Thomas is as a form of social oppression involving the social imposition of restrictions of activity on people with impairments and the socially engendered undermining of their psycho-emotional well-being. Next, please. These studies challenged the fact that the psyche can be understood as a cultural artifact of contemporary society that individualizes social problems, that locates social problems in the heads and bodies, that is the psyches of disabled people. In this article, Goodley argued that the psyche can also be constructed socially and unconsciously by people. It basically challenges what has Freud signified as the id, in which it includes an awareness and unconsciousness of an individual. Through social psychoanalytic disability studies, it perceives self as a complex knot of cultural, familial, and embodied elements that cannot be untied simply by focusing on the conscious views or attitude of individuals. Ourselves are underpinned by unconscious structures that affect how we live our lives and respond to others. As in the case of children's literature, it can unintentionally promote the disabilism through the negative portrayal of disabled people as evil characters. For instance, the portrayal of unmerciful pirates who are crippled. Therefore, there are also some disfigured villains like Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter, Captain James Hook in Peter Pan, and etc. However, in Moses Goes to a Concert, we can see it as an effort to dismiss this negative stigma toward the characterizations of disfigured or disabled people as villains. In this story, Moses is treated equal by his friends and his teacher. He also has a positive attitude regardless of his physical limitations. This positive attitude is emphasized by the character of Miss Elwyn, who is the inspiring percussionist for Moses, who are actually suffered hearing impairment. Children's literature, like this book, can form an unconscious understanding toward children about people with impairments that regardless of their differences compared to non-disabled people, they can still perform activities such as non-disabled people do. Therefore, people, and especially children, can learn to perceive and treat people equally.
Okay, this is Fatah speaking. Have you ever known a child who behave a little differently from children their age? And then you wonder why they act like that. They sometimes react to sensitive or less sensitively to certain stimuli. We may be able to assume that the child has sensory needs autism, where someone who has these sensory needs has difficulty in processing everyday sensory information that can hinder their daily lives. Written by Miss Orundel, this book tells the story of Jack, a child who has sensory needs. As a child who could be oversensitive or undersensitive to certain stimuli, Jack could perceive the world a little differently from the people around him. In this picture book, we can see and peer into the experience through the perspective of Jack's sister, wading through the world seen in Jack's eyes, which his sister calls Planet Jake. Next slide, please. So why did we choose this book? This picture storybook for children will invite us to see the world from the perspective of a child with sensory needs and give us advice on how to deal with a child who has sensory needs. This picture book can fill the gap in our knowledge about a child who has autism, which is expected in the end we can get a better understanding of their condition, and also with the hope that we can guide and foster a healthy and mutually supportive relationship between a child with autism and their family, friends, and other people around them. Next slide, please.
Well, once again, we use psychoanalysis to analyze this book. Okay, autism is a developmental disorder affecting between 4 and 10 in every 10,000 children born. Jack is an autistic child, but we have to know first what is autism. It is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how people communicate and interact with the world. Next, please. The core of psychoanalysis in Sigmund Freud is the belief that all people possess unconscious thoughts, feelings, desires, and memories. Through the form of ID, ego, and superego, we can analyze the personality of the main character in the My Brother is an Astronaut by Michael Handel. Jack is autism and he has sensory differences. Everything he does is involuntary. He never seems to know where to land or how to be still. He's too busy with his planet Jack that he doesn't see his family in sway and crash into them. Jack doesn't do it on purpose. He just needs to bounce and spin to keep him happy. Due to the sensory differences, he can do some extraordinary things. Sometimes his family gets cross because he doesn't realize the mess he made. Next. Well, as we can see in the picture book, Jack has sensory issues. So what are sensory issues? For autistic people, it is difficult to process this everyday sensory information and any of their senses may be over or undersensitive, or both at different times. Here we look at some of the effects of hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity to sound, smell, balance, or vestibular and touch. Next.
So, in the first data, we can see the effect of the sound stimulus on Jack. There are some sounds I know he doesn't like and that frighten him. He gets upset and covers his ears, or he tries to run away or hide. That is when I wonder if some of the animals on planet Jake are just too scary for him. We can see from this quote that Jake can be overly sensitive to sound stimuli. We can see how Jake can be very sensitive to certain sounds, which makes him try to avoid or hide from those sounds by covering his ears.
Okay, sorry. Smell. In the second data, we can see the effect of other stimuli such as smell on Jack. We can see on the page 10, he even knows when someone else has sat in his car seat because it smells different. Jack is oversensitive to smell. He can work out which one is his by smelling them.
In the third data, we can see the effect of other stimuli, such as the balance on Jack. He just needs to bounce and spin to keep him happy. Our home planet doesn't spin and bounce enough for him. We can see that Jack is undersensitive. Sometimes he has difficulty stopping quickly or during an activity. It can be seen that Jack is a bit hyperactive and he needs to move around a lot to get more sensory input from his surroundings.
In the last data, touch is the effect of other stimuli on Jack. We can see on the page 12, he can be a bit funny about clothes too. Jack doesn't like wearing new clothes. He says they feel scorchy, it's funny too. He loves cuddles, especially big bear hugs. When he's upset, the best way to help him to calm down is to give him a really big squeeze. In metaphor, we can conclude sometimes Jack can become overly sensitive or less sensitive to tackle stimuli.
In the book, we can see that there are many stimuli that stimulate Jack either too sensitive or undersensitively. Although sometimes this can make his family confused or a little annoyed with Jack's behavior, we can see that they still love him very much and provide the support and affection that Jack needs. We have to acknowledge that not everyone is the same, and some people are born with slightly special traits, but that does not mean that they are people who are too different from us, even though they have slightly different traits and behaviors. They just need slightly different attention, and we need to be able to understand that difference because in the end, they are still one of us. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, my friends. And then the last book is we have Hailey's Friends as the last book. And for the synopsis, Hailey's Friends is actually a storybook by Michelle Randall and Emma Birch to explain cerebral palsy to young children. And this book was launched by the UK disability charity Scope, and with the help of a mom of a young girl with a cerebral palsy and her occupational therapist to help other young children to understand how different equipment can help to improve everyday activities. And as for the reason why we choose this book is that Haley's friends teaches children to accept their condition and encourage them not to be afraid of what others might think of their condition. And the reason behind we choose Haley's friends among the other disability themed book is because this book is not merely a children's book to entertain children, because as we all know, children can be very curious, and together with her occupational therapist and disability charity Scope, Birch, the author, wanted to encourage the children with special needs that they may be different because they need help from various tools and equipment to keep them going. But those equipment were also used to make them easier to do the things they want. And just like the saying from the book, sometimes that means showing us a different way to do things. Okay, next.
Okay, the next one, I'm going to explain about the psychological analysis of Hailey's friend. The first one is psychological needs. She has a special friend called Lily who goes everywhere with her. Lily is a working frame. She is a bit shy and hides behind Hailey, but she has an important job. She helps her to walk. And then at home, Hailey got into her super easy chair to eat her favorite dinner. And the next one is organism environment relationship. Hailey was very quiet walking home with daddy. There was a very big answer to her question, but she thought she understood. She was very glad she has Lily to help her walk. She was a very good friend. And then that night, Hailey gave Toby an extra pat to the head to say thank you for getting his thing lit up. He had helped her to understand how her body worked. That made Toby a very good friend too. Next slide. Okay, the next one is social inferiority. Mommy, is this how the message from my head to my arms and legs look? I'll sing it up. How can we make them work better? She asked. And then the next one is belongingness and love needs. Mommy said, you have a lot of friends who help you to do that, and you have 2 more friends who help you, said Daddy. And the next one is unconscious mind. Haley didn't know. She looked around but couldn't see anymore. Anyone? Next slide. Okay. Physical inferiority. One day she asked, Daddy, why can't I walk like you do? And then the safety needs. Daddy, is my chair like Lily? Does it help my muscle work better? She asked. Yes, Hailey, it is. It helps you sit up properly so you can draw and write and use your knife and work more easily. And then, yes, it is. Your lycra, so it helps you muscle relax so that the messages from your brain can go where you need them to go. And the last one is striving for superiority. Wow, so Hailey, I do have a lot of friends to help me. Next slide. Okay. Maybe that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, here are the reference from our slides before. And thank you for watching, guys. That's all from us, Group 6. Thank you so much.